Hi, welcome to Prime Education Solutions. Today we are going to discuss about CA Final Audit, Professional Ethics and Liabilities of Auditor Part 1. Let us now understand the professional ethics. Overview of Code of Ethics. The Code of Ethics contains the four parts. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Part 4. The Part 1 contains the fundamental principles and the conceptual framework. Part 2 contains the professional accountants in service. Part 3 contains the professional accountant in public practice. And Part 4 contains the independence standards. Part 1 contains the fundamental principles and the conceptual framework. Part 2 contains the professional accountant in service. Part 3 contains professional accountant in public practice. And Part 4 is independence for assurance and audit engagements. Let us now understand the Part 1. The Part 1 contains the fundamental principles and conceptual framework, and it is applicable to all professional accountants. It means the Part 1 consists of fundamental principles and the conceptual frameworks, and it is applicable to all professional accountants. Let's come to Part 2, Professional Accountant in Service, which sets out additional material that is applies to professional accountant in service when performing the professional activities. It also applicable to individuals who are the professional accountant in public practice performing the professional activities pursuant to their relationship with the firm as an employee. In overall, it means that the professional accountant in service when performing the professional activities, they need to apply the part 2 of Code of Ethics, and also professional accountant in practice when they are performing the professional activities pursuant to their relationship with the firm as an employee, then they need to apply the part 2 of the Code of Ethics. Let us come to part 3, which sets out additional material that applies to professional accountant in public practice when providing the professional services. It means whenever the professional accountant in public practice, when he is providing the any professional services, he need to apply the part 3 of Code of Ethics. Now part 4. Part 4 contains independent standards. It means it contains additional material that applies to professional accountant in public practice when providing the assurance services. Means the part 4 applicable to professional accountant in public practice when they are providing assurance services. Part 4 is divided into two types, Part 4A and Part 4B. Part 4A contains independence for audit and review engagements, means it is applicable to only for audit and review engagement. Part 4B contains the independence for assurance engagement other than the audit and review engagement, means Part 4B is applicable only other than the audit and review engagement, but which is assurance engagement for that independence requirement. Now let us understand glossary part of Code of Ethics, which contain the defined terms, describe terms which have specific meaning in certain parts of the code. Glossary also includes list of abbreviations that are used in the code and other standards that code refers. Means this glossary part contains the terms which are used in the Code of Ethics, their meaning, and also the abbreviations, the shortcuts, whatever the shortcuts are there, and the abbreviations of the shortcuts also contains in the glossary. Now let us understand how the code is structured. Our Code of Ethics contains the sections and subsections. The sections deal with specific topics and subsections deal with specific aspects of those topics. Sections deal with specific topics and subsections deal with specific aspects of those topics. And each section is structured in the following manner. Each section contains introduction, requirement, application material. Each section contains three parts: introduction, requirements, and application material. Now let us understand the introduction part of the section. The introduction sets out the subject matter addressed within the section and introduces the requirement and application material in the concept of conceptual framework. It contains the information which is important to the understanding and application of each part and its sections. It also includes explanation of terms used. It means the introduction part of the section deals with the matter which is addressed in the section, and it is also gives the brief introduction for the requirement and the application material, and it will define the terms which are used in the section, and it contains information which is important to the understanding and application of each part and each section. means introduction part contains additional information which is important for the understanding of the section. Now the requirement parts of section. It establishes general and specific obligation with respect to subject matter addressed. Means it explains what are the general obligation, what are the specific obligation with respect to the subject matter addressed. Now the application material part of the section. It provides context, explanation, suggestions for actions or matters to consider, the illustrations, other guidance to assist in compliance with the requirement. Means this application material part of the section gives the context and gives suggestions and gives the explanation which is very important to the understanding of the section, and it is very important to comply with the requirement of the section. It gives the illustrations, it gives the context, and it gives explanations, and it gives suggestions which are very important to comply with the requirement of the section. So this application material is act as a guide to assist in compliance with the requirement of a section. Sometimes what will happen is there might be circumstances that where laws and regulations preclude a professional accountant from complying with certain parts of the code. Means there is a certain law which precludes the professional accountant to comply with the code. In such cases, the professional accountant need to comply with the law. Means law and regulations will prevail, and the professional accountant need to comply with the remaining part of the code. Means the laws and regulations will prevail, means professional accountant need to comply with the laws and regulations, and remaining part of the code which is not precluded by the laws and regulation need to be complied by the professional accountant. There might be circumstances where laws and regulations preclude the professional accountant from compliance with certain parts of the code. In such circumstances, laws and regulations prevail and professional accountant expected to comply with the remaining part of the code. Now, let us understand the fundamental principles. There are five fundamental principles: integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality, professional behavior. There are five fundamental principles: integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality, professional behavior. Integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality, and professional behavior. Now, let us understand the integrity. The accountant should be straightforward and honest in all the professional and business relationship. Integrity requires an accountant to be straightforward and honest in all the professional and business relationship. And integrity implies the fair dealing and truthfulness. What mean by integrity means it is a fair dealing and truthfulness. To comply with the integrity, the professional accountant should not be associated with the information, the reports, a document, or any other information that contains materially false or misleading statements. So, the professional accountant should not associate with any information that contains materially false or misleading statement, contain the statement or information that provided negligently, omits, obscures the required information, where such omission or obscurity would be misleading. Omits or obscures the required information, where such omission or obscurity would be misleading. So, the professional accountant to comply with the integrity, he need not to be associated with the information which contains materially false and misleading statement and contains a statement or information that provided negligently, and he omits or obscures the information. Such omission or obscurity would be misleading. Professional accountant will not be considered to be breach of matters mentioned above if the professional accountant provided modified report. It means if the professional accountant provide the modified report, then he is not considered to be associated with the information mentioned above. Means the professional accountant should give modified report whenever he associated with the misleading or false information, whenever he associated with the information that provided negligently, whenever he associated with the omittance or obscurity of information. Such omission or obscurity would be misleading. Professional accountant have become aware of having been associated with the information. Accountant should take steps to dissociate it from that information. Means professional accountant already associated with the false information, and now the professional accountant become aware about that information. Now the professional accountant should take steps to dissociate it from that information. Now, objectivity. Professional accountant should not compromise in professional or business judgment because of bias, conflict of interest, undue influence of others. Professional accountant shall not undertake the professional activity if circumstances or relationship unduly influences the accountant professional judgment regarding that activity. It means professional accountant should not compromise in his professional judgment. Professional accountant should not compromise in his professional judgment because of bias. He should not take any professional judgment because of bias, and he should not give the conflict of interest, and he should not undue influence of others. He should not be influenced by the another person. He should look the things objectively, and if any circumstances or relationship that unduly influence the professional accountant judgment, then the professional accountant should not undertake that professional activity itself. Professional competence and due care. Professional accountant shall comply with the principle of professional competence and due care, which requires an accountant to attain and maintain the professional knowledge and skill at the level required to ensure that both the client or employing organization receives the competent professional services based on the current technical, professional, and business standards and also relevant legislations. It means professional accountant to comply with the professional competence and due care, he need to attain the knowledge and he need to maintain the knowledge and skill at the level required to ensure that both the client and employing organization receives professional competence services. Means we should acquire the knowledge at the level we ensure that both the client and employee organization receives the professional competence services based on what? Based on the current technical, professional, and business standards, and also as per the relevant legislations. Act diligently in accordance with applicable technical and professional standards. Professional accountant need to act diligently in accordance with applicable technical and professional standards. The serving clients with the professional competence requires excess of sound judgment in applying the professional knowledge and skill when undertaking the professional activity. Means if you wanted to serve the clients with professional competence, means we need to exercise sound judgment and also we need to apply the professional knowledge and skill to undertake the professional activity. Maintaining professional competence requires continuous awareness and understanding of relevant technical, professional, and business developments. Continuing professional development enables the professional accountant to develop and maintain the capabilities to perform competently within the professional environment. Maintaining professional competence requires continuing awareness and understanding of relevant technical, professional, and business development. Continuing professional development enables the professional accountant to develop and maintain the capabilities to perform competently within the professional environment. Means to maintain the professional competence, we should be continuously aware about the information, we should be continuously aware about the technical and professional and business developments. Whenever we continuously aware the technical and business and professional developments, we should be in a position, we should have capabilities to perform competently within the professional environment. So when we continuously aware about the professional and business development, we are in a capable position to perform the competent within the professional environment. Diligence encompasses the responsibility to act in accordance with the requirement of an assignment carefully, thoroughly, on a timely basis. It means what is meant by diligence means the responsibility to act in accordance with the requirement of an assignment. What is meant by diligence? Responsibility to act in accordance with the requirement of an assignment carefully, thoroughly, on a timely basis. In complying with the professional competence and due care, and professional accountant shall comply with the reasonable steps to ensure that those working in a professional capacity under the accountant's authority have appropriate training and supervision. It means not only you professionally competent, not only you professionally competent, but also those working under you also have proper training or supervision to perform the professional activities with professional competence. The persons who are working under you also professionally competent, they have the proper training and supervision to perform their professional activities professionally competently. Professional accountant shall comply with the principle of confidentiality, which requires accountant to respect the confidentiality of information acquired because of professional and employment relationship. It means professional accountant, because of his professional and employment relationship, because he is a professional or because he is an employee of this organization, he will get to know about some confidential information. He should respect the confidentiality of such information. That's it. Now, let us understand what professional accountant need to do to maintain the confidentiality of information. There are the 5 to 6 points are there to requirements for keeping the information confidentially. First point is be alert to the possibility of inadvertent disclosure, including in social environment, to a close business associate or immediate family member or a close family member. Means alert to the possibility of inadvertent disclosure. Next, maintain the confidentiality of information acquired within the firm or employer organization. Maintain the confidential information acquired within the firm or employer organization. Next, confidential information from the prospective client. Maintain the confidential information acquired from the prospective client. Next, not to disclose the confidential information acquired outside the firm or employing organization without a specific and proper authority unless there is a professional or legal duty to disclose. Not to disclose confidential information acquired outside the firm or employee organization without the proper and specific authority unless there is a legal or professional duty or right to disclose. Next, not to disclose the confidential information acquired during the professional and business relationship after the relationship has ended. Means not to disclose the information which you acquired during your relationship with the employee or your relationship with the client, but not to disclose such information after the relationship has ended. Next, take the reasonable steps to ensure that the personnel under accountant's control and individuals from whom advice and assistance are obtained respect the accountant's duty of confidentiality. It means not only you respect the confidentiality of information and also the persons who are working under you and also from whom you obtain assistance and advices. They also respect the your duty of confidentiality. Sometimes the disclosure of confidential information is allowed. So let us understand those circumstances when the disclosure of confidential information is allowed. Whenever the disclosure is required by law, then the professional accountant need to disclose the confidential information. Whenever the disclosure is permitted by law and is the authorized by the client or employer organization, then the professional accountant need to disclose the confidential information. The disclosure of confidential information and also allowed in the following scenario when there is a professional duty or legal duty or the right to disclose to comply with the requirement of peer review and quality review, respond to an inquiry or investigation by a professional or regulatory body, protect the professional interest of a professional accountant in a legal proceedings to comply with the technical and professional standards including the ethical requirements. Means the professional accountant can disclose the confidential information in the following situations to comply with the requirement of quality review and peer review, and the respond to an inquiry or investigation by the professional or regulatory body, and protect the professional interest of a professional accountant in the legal proceedings, and to comply with the technical and professional standards, including the ethical requirements. The points need to consider in deciding whether to disclose confidential information. So what is the point need to consider? What are the points we need to consider whenever we are deciding whether this type of information can be disclosed or not? The how can we disclose the information? Whenever we are deciding whether to disclose the confidential information or not, we should take the following points into consider. Whether the interest of any party could be harmed, including the third party, because of disclosure. First, we need to check whether the interest of any party could be get harmed because of disclosure, including the third party. Next, whether all the relevant information is obtained substantiated to the extent is practicable. When all the information is known and substantiated to the extent is practicable. Next, what is the proposed type of communication and to whom it is addressed? What is the proposed type of communication, to whom it is addressed? Next, we need to check whether the parties to whom the communication is addressed are appropriate recipients. So there are the 4 points we need to consider whenever we are deciding whether to disclose confidential information or not. The first point is whether the interest of any party could be harmed because of disclosure, including the third party, whether the relevant information is known and substantiated to the extent it is practicable, proposed type of communication, and to whom it is addressed, whether the parties to whom the communication is addressed are appropriate recipients. These are the 4 points we need to check before deciding whether to disclose the confidential information or not. Professional accountant shall continue to comply with the principle of confidentiality even after the end of relationship with the client or employing organization. Means professional accountant need to comply with the principle of confidentiality even after the end of the relationship. Accountant entitled to use prior experience but shall not use or disclose confidential information received as a result of professional and employment relationship. Means a professional accountant can use the previous experience, can use the previous skill, and can use the previous knowledge, but he should not disclose the confidential information and received as a result of professional and employment relationship. He should not disclose the confidential information received as a result of professional and employment relationship, but he can use the previous experience, previous skill, and previous knowledge, but he should not disclose the confidential information which is very confidential to the client, which is very confidential to the employee organization, because of his getting access to such kind of information, because of his professional employment relationship, but that kind of information he should not disclose to anybody. Now, professional behavior. Professional behavior. What is meant by professional behavior? Professional accountant shall comply with the principle of professional behavior, which requires accountant to comply with all the relevant laws and regulations. What are the laws and regulations are there and which are applicable to professional accountant? The professional accountant need to comply with all the relevant laws and regulations, and also professional accountant need to avoid any conduct that accountant knows or should know might discredit their profession. Means what is the two things the professional accountant need to do to comply with the professional behavior is he should comply with all the relevant laws and regulations, and he need to avoid any conduct the accountant knows or should know that might discredit the profession. Conduct that might discredit the profession. What is meant by conduct that might discredit the profession? Means it is a conduct that is reasonable and informed third party would likely to conclude adversely affects the good reputation of the profession. Means what is the bad conduct and what is the conduct that accountant need to avoid? When the question arises what is the conduct the accountant need to avoid, means it is the conduct which the reasonable and informed third party, the third party is reasonable and informed third party, means well knowledge third party would likely to conclude that adversely affects the good reputation of the profession. Means the reasonable and informed third party would likely to conclude that such conduct is adversely affects the good reputation of the profession. That type of conduct the professional accountant need to avoid. Professional accountant should not engage in any employment, occupation, activity that might impair the integrity, objectivity, and the good reputation of the profession. So, professional accountant should not engage in any employment, occupation, or activity that spoil the good reputation of the profession. When promoting himself and his work, the professional accountant shall not bring the profession into disrepute. Professional accountant required to conduct his affairs in a manner that remains outside the boundaries of professional and other misconduct. It means whenever the promoting the professional accountant himself and his work, professional accountant shall not bring the profession into disrepute, and professional accountant required to conduct his affairs in a manner that remains outside the boundaries of professional and other misconduct. The following things the professional accountant should not do while promoting his work, that is, exaggerate the claims for the services they can offer, the qualification they possess, and experience they have gained. They should not exaggerate the claims for the services they can offer, the qualifications they can possess, and experience they have gained. Next, disparaging references, unsubstantiated comparison to the work of others. You should not give the disparaging references and unsubstantiated comparison to the work of others. Any direct or indirect measures to advertise or professional or business other facts which are in violation of advertisement guidelines issued by the institute from time to time. You should not make any measures, any direct or indirect measures to advertise is professional or other facts. Means you should not make advertisement professional or other facts violation of advertisement guidelines issued by the institute. Means you should not advertise in a manner that violates the advertisement guidelines issued by the institute. Professional accountant also ensure that content of advertisement are true to the best of his knowledge and belief and are in conformity with advertisement guidelines. Professional accountant need to ensure the content of information which is given in advertisement is true to the best of his knowledge and belief, and also you need to ensure that they are conform with the advertisement guidelines. Be aware that institute does not own any responsibility whatsoever for such content or claims by him. Be aware that institute does not own any responsibility whatsoever for such content or claims by him. However, professional accountant is in doubt where the form of proposed advertising are appropriate. The accountant is encouraged to consult with the Ethical Standard Board of ICAI. Whenever the professional accountant having doubt that whether my advertisement is appropriate as per advertisement guidelines issued by the ICAI, then the professional accountant encourage to consult with ethical standard board of ICAI. Means professional organization need to go to ethical standard board of ICAI and need to ask whether my advertisement is inappropriate with the advertisement guidelines issued by the institute or not. Let us understand some general points. Professional accountant shall comply with each of the fundamental principles. Fundamental principles establishes the standard of behavior expected from a professional. It means fundamental principles gives the some expectation how we are expecting from the professionals, how the behavior we are expecting from the professional. Professional fundamental principles establishes standard of behavior we are expecting from the professionals. This conceptual framework assists the professional accountant to comply with the requirement of fundamental principles. So this conceptual framework, what is the conceptual framework? This establishes an approach to assist in complying with the requirement of fundamental principles. Sometimes what will happen is the professional accountant might face situation in which complying with one fundamental principle conflict with complying with one or more other fundamental principles. In such situation, the accountant might consider consulting with others within the firm or employing organization, those charged with governance, the institute, and the legal counsel. It means sometimes compliance with one fundamental principles conflict with another fundamental principle. At such type of In such type of situations, the professional accountant need to comply with others within the firm or employing organization. He need to comply others in the firm. Next, those charged with the governance, and next institute. Then after legal counsel, he need to consult. However, such consultation does not relieve accountant from the responsibility to exercise professional judgment to resolve the conflict of interest if necessary, unless prohibited by law or regulation disassociated from the matter creating the conflict. Means, irrespective of consultation, professional accountant need to apply the professional judgment to resolve the conflict which is arised. If he feels necessary, he need to withdraw from the engagement. He need to dissociate it from the matter, creating the conflict. Professional accountant encouraged to discuss the substance of the issue, details of any discussion, the decisions are made, rationale of those decisions. Professional accountant encouraged to document the substance of the issue. What is the issue they have faced, and what is the details of an issue, what is the discussions they have made, what is the decision they have made, and what is the rationale behind those decisions, why the such decision is taken, what is the rationale behind such decision. That is also professional accountant need to taken care of. Now let us understand some threats, evolution of threats and safeguards. Now we understand as of until this point we understand the fundamental principles. Now sometimes the conceptual framework specifies an approach for the professional accountant to identify the threat to complying with the fundamental principles. Means we will face some threats to compliance with the fundamental principles. This conceptual framework specifies how to identify the compliance with the fundamental principles, how to identify the threats to compliance with fundamental principles, and how to evaluate the threats identified, and how to address the threats by eliminating or reducing them to an acceptable level. Means the three things we need to do here is the conceptual framework specifies how to identify the threats to compliance with fundamental principles, and how to evaluate the threats, and how to address the threats by eliminating or reducing them to an acceptable level. There are totally 5 types of threats: self-interest threat, self-review threat, advocacy threat, familiarity threat, intimidation threat. Self-interest threat, self-review threat, advocacy threat, familiarity threat, intimidation threat. There are 5 threats: self-interest threat, self-review threat, advocacy threat, familiarity threat, intimidation threat. There are 5 threats. Self-interest threat. Threat that financial other interest will inappropriately influence the professional accountant judgment or behavior. It means that because the professional accountant has some interest in the employing organization, or because the professional accountant has some interest in the client organization, his professional behavior or his professional judgment will change. So that is the self-interest threat. Threat that financial other interest will inappropriately influences the professional accountant judgment or behavior. Now, self-review threat. Self-review threat is Third, that professional accountant will not appropriately evaluate the result of previous judgment made or result of an activity performed by the accountant or by another individual within the accountant firm or employing organization, which accountant will rely when forming a judgment as part of performing current activity. It means that professional accountant previously done some other work. Now, professional accountant is not reviewing the previous done work, as is not reviewing the previous professional judgment which are made, and he is now believing, now using that professional judgment which are previously made, or now using the previous results for the previous activity, now using for the performing the current activity. This contains the self-review threat. The threat that a professional accountant will not appropriately evaluate the result of previous achievement made, the activity performed by the accountant or by another individual within the accountant firm or employing organization on which accountant will rely when performing the professional forming the judgment as part of performing current activity. Third, that professional accountant will not appropriately evaluate the result of previous judgment made, activity performed by the accountant or by another individual within the accountant's firm or employing organization on which accountant will rely when forming the judgment as part of performing current activity. Third, that professional accountant will promote client or employing organization to the position to the point that content objectivity is compromised. It means that we are already supporting the client with some other issue, so our objectivity is compromised because of our previously supporting the client with some other issue. The threat that a professional accountant will promote a client employee organization. We are already promoting client or employing organization position to the point that accountant objectivity is compromised. Because of we are already promoting the client and employee organization, our objectivity, the seeing the things with unbiased manner, our objectivity is compromised. Threat that due to long or close relationship with the client or employing organization, professional accountant will be too sympathetic to their interest and too accepting of their work. Because we are the close relationship with the client or employing organization, because we have the close relationship with the client or employing organization, we are too sympathetic to their interest. We are supporting their interest in every point, and we are too accepting of their work. We are taking their work very frequently because they are close relationship with us, and we are doing more benefit to them. This is called familiarity threat. Since after because of we see the things familiarly, because we are much supporting the interest of the client, we cannot see the things differently. This is a familiarity threat. The threat that because we see that things are very familiar, because we feel that things are very familiar, because we feel that we already know everything, so we cannot see the things objectively. Next is intimidation threat. Threat that professional accountant will be deterred from acting objectively because of actual or perceived pressures, including attempts to exercise undue influence over the accountant. Means threat that professional accountant will be deterred from acting objectively. Professional accountant stopped from acting objectively because the actual or perceived pressure. We are making the pressure on the professional accountant to stop him acting objectively, and we are also attempting to exercise undue influence over the accountant. We are also attempting him to exercise undue influence over the content to compromise, make him to compromise his objectivity. The threat that professional accountant will be deterred from acting objectively because of actual and perceived pressures, including attempts to exercise undue influence over the accountant. Evaluation of threat. We need to evaluate whether the threat to compliance with fundamental principles is at an acceptable level. So just now we understand about the threats. Now we need to evaluate whether threat to compliance with fundamental principles is at an acceptable level. For that, we need to understand what is an acceptable level. Acceptable level is a level at which a professional accountant using reasonable and informed third party test would likely to conclude that the accountant complies with the fundamental principles. What is meant by acceptable level means if any reasonable and informed third party means well knowledge and informed third party, whenever they sees that he feel that accountant already complied with the fundamental principles. Actually, we are not complied with fundamental principles. We are complied with fundamental principles with a little bit threats. But when the reasonable informed third party sees that, then he tells that the accountant complied with the fundamental principles. That is called acceptable level. Acceptable level is a level at which a professional accountant using the reasonable and informed third party test would likely to conclude that the accountant already complies with the fundamental principles. That is called acceptable level. Now let us understand what is reasonable and informed third party test. Reasonable and informed third party test is a consideration by the professional accountant about whether the same conclusions would likely to be reached by another party. What is reasonable and informed third party means? It is a consideration by the professional accountant. Professional accountant considering that whether the same conclusions, whatever the conclusions I reach, is the same conclusions will reach by if any reasonable and informed third party see it would likely to be reached by another party. Such consideration made from the perspective of a reasonable and informed third party who weighs all relevant facts and circumstances that the opponent knows could reasonably expect to know at the time of conclusions are made. So this same conclusion will reach by another party or not. Such considerations will made from the perspective of reasonable and informed third party. Such reasonable and informed third party knows all relevant facts and circumstances that the accountant knows or the knows all relevant facts and circumstances the accountant might know when making the conclusions. That is reasonable and informed third party test. This reasonable and informed third party need not to be an accountant, but would possess all relevant knowledge and experience to understand and evaluate the appropriateness of accountant conclusions in an impartial manner. This informed third party need not to be a chartered accountant. He should have the relevant knowledge and experience to understand and evaluate the appropriateness of the accountant conclusions in an impartial manner. Now, let us understand how to address the threats. As of now, we understand what is the fundamental principles, what are the threats, and we understand what are the threats and what are the fundamental principles, and we also understand how to evaluate the threats. Now, let us understand how to address the threats. Professional accountant determines that the identified threats to compliance with the fundamental principles are not at an acceptable level. The accountant shall address the threats by eliminating them or reducing them to an acceptable level. Whenever the professional accountant determines that the threats are not at an acceptable level, then he need to address the threats by eliminating them or reduce them to an acceptable level. So how to address the threats? So there are the three ways to address the threats. Eliminating the circumstances, including the interest or relationship that creating threats. So what are the interest and relationship and circumstances that creating threat? Eliminate that circumstances. Next, apply the safeguards where available and capable of being applied to reduce the threats to an acceptable level. We need to apply the safeguards to reduce the threats to an acceptable level. If the two things above are not possible, decline ending the specific professional activity. We need to cancel that professional activity. We need to decline or end that professional activity. So there are three ways to address the threat: eliminate the circumstances that creating the threat, including interest and relationship, apply the safeguards and capable of being applied to reduce the threats to an acceptable level, declining and ending the specific professional activity. Now let us understand safeguards. Safeguards are actions individually or in combination that accountant takes that effectively reduce the threat to an acceptable level. What is meant by safeguards means it is an actions individually or in combination that accountant takes that affects the effectively reduce the threat to an acceptable level. Means by applying the safeguards we can reduce the threat to an acceptable level. Safeguards vary depending on the facts and circumstances. Based on the facts and circumstances, safeguards are vary. Now let us understand another important concept called NOCLAR, non-compliance with laws and regulations. The professional accountant may come across instances of non-compliance with laws and regulations or suspected non-compliance with laws and regulations about to be committed by the client or employee organization or TCWG management or employees of the client or employee organization. Means sometimes during the course of professional activities, during the course of professional services, the professional accountant may come across as instances of non-compliance with laws and regulations. He come to know that some laws and regulations non-compliance and suspected non-compliance committed or about to be committed by the client or employee organization or TCWG or management or employees of the organization. So first we need to understand what is the non-compliance with laws and regulations. What is meant by non-compliance? Let us understand non-compliance means it is a act of omission or commission. Means either the omission or commission that is intentional may be unintentional which is contrary to the laws and regulations. Means the act of omission contrary to the laws and regulation, act of commission contrary to the laws and regulation, whether it is intentional or unintentional, it is called non-compliance with laws and regulation. This non-compliance may be by the client or employing organization, it may be done by TCWG, it may be done by management, it may be done by other individuals working under the client or employing organization. The no-clear and the revised code of ethics does not address the personal misconduct unrelated to business activities of the client employer organization and non-compliance by parties are then listed out in the definition of no-clear. In the no-clear, that does not cover the personal misconduct which are not related to the business activities of the employer or client organization. Means the personal misconduct, personal loss violation and all not covered under the no-clear, and the no-clear also not covered the non-compliance by the parties are then mentioned in the no-clear definition. Now let us understand some important facts about the no-clear. During the course of providing service, not required to investigate and not responsible for ensuring the competent complete compliance means the professional auditor need to find out the non-compliance with laws and regulations only during the course of his providing service or professional activities. He come across the instances of non-compliance with laws and regulations. You should not require to investigate with the non-compliance and laws and regulation, and he should not responsible for ensuring complete compliance with the laws and regulations. So he should give the report of non-compliance with laws and regulations in the during the course of providing his services or during the performing of professional activities. He come across any situation of non-compliance with the laws and regulations only, he need to report the such laws and regulations. Next, professional accountant need not to have expertise knowledge in the laws and regulations. Why? Because the professional accountant need to maintain the expertise knowledge of laws and regulations to the level that is required to perform his activities. He should not required to have expertise knowledge of laws and regulations. Why? Because the ultimately whether the non-compliance happen or not is ultimately decided by the court. If certain matters are expressly out of our view, but the matters which are related not related to the business activities are outside the scope of no-clear. Certain matters are expressly out of our view. The laws and regulations non-compliance in the personal misconduct not related to the business activities outside the scope of no-clear. Disclosure which is contrary to the law not required means the no clause tells that if you come across with any situation you should disclose, you should report thus in the no clause reporting. But if such disclosure is contrary to any laws and regulation, then such disclosure is not required to do. Means as per no clause you need to give the report of non-compliance, but if such disclosure is against any laws and regulation, then such disclosure should not be given. Now let us understand the applicability of no-clear. No-clear is applicable to senior professional accountant in service, being the employees of listed entities. Means no-clear applicable to employees of listed entities, the two who are in the senior professional accountants. So what is the mean by senior professional accountant? Senior professional accountant is nothing but the director, officer or employee who exert significant influence and control the resources and also take the decisions regarding the acquisition, deployment and control of resources. The further explain that senior professional accountant in service is nothing but the key managerial person. So the senior professional accountants are nothing but the key managerial personnel. No-clear is also applicable to audit engagement of entities of shares which are listed in the recognized stock exchanges and having the net worth of 250 crore rupees or more. So no-clear is applicable to listed entities which are having net worth of 250 crore rupees or more. Now let us understand the differences and similarities between the no-clear versus SA250. SA250 is applicable to audit engagements, where the no-clear is applicable to professional accountant in service and professional accountant in practice. And SA250 deals with the laws and regulations which have a direct effect on the determination of material amounts in the financial statements and the laws and regulations which are fundamental to the operating aspect of the business. But no-clear is also covered these laws and regulations, and also it additionally covers the laws and regulations that could substantially harm both financially and non-financially to the organization. SC250 does not define the stakeholders. No clause is related to affect the non-compliance investors, creditors, employees, and also the public. So SC250 does not define the stakeholders who are going to be affected, but no clause defines the stakeholders as investors, creditors, employees, and also the public and the government. As per no clause, in exceptional circumstances, professional accountant can report imminent breach to appropriate authority by exercising the professional judgment. So SC250 only deals with the breach of laws and regulations, but not by imminent breach. But as per no clause, we can report the imminent breach to avoid the substantial harm that causes because of the breach. So imminent breach also we can avoid as per the NOCLAR. Next, provisions of confidentiality under the Charter of Accountants Act 1949. Charter of Accountants in practice shall be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct if the disclosure of information acquired during the professional engagement to any person other than his client, so engaging him without the consent of his client or otherwise than as required by any law for the time being in force. Means Charter of Accountants in practice shall be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct. He disclose any information which is acquired during his professional capacity, which is acquired during his professional relationship to any person other than his client or to any person without the consent of his client otherwise than as required by any law for the time being in force. A member of the institute, whether in practice or not, shall be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct if he, being an employee of any company, or firm, or person, disclose the confidential information acquired in the course of his employment, except as and when required by law for the ramming in force, except as permitted by employer. Member of the institute, whether in practice or not, shall be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct if he, being an employee of any company, firm, or persons, disclose any confidential information acquired in the course of his employment, except as and when required by law for the time being in force, except as permitted by employer. Documentation in NOCLA. The how management and those charged with the governance are responded to the matter. So before we are reporting the matters in NOCLA, we'll discuss first with the management. So first we need to document how the management and those charged with the governance have responded to the matter. The course of action accountant considered, the judgments are made, the decisions that were taken having regard to the reasonable and informed the party test. What is the accountant considered? What is the course of action accountant considered? What are the judgments are made? What are the decisions were taken regarding the reasonable and informed the party test? Also, we need to document how the accountant is satisfied with the responsibility to public interest has been fulfilled. How the accountant is satisfied that responsibility of the public interest has been fulfilled. Even how the accountant satisfied that the responsibility to act public interest has been fulfilled. By reporting the NOCLAR, how the accountant is satisfied himself with the responsibility to act in public interest has been fulfilled. Thank you. Thank you very much for watching our video.